he's this puppet master character, but he is having his strings pulled by Celia Moten, and it's really an interesting dynamic.
That sounds really dark and powerful there. She's really not that dark and powerful. She's just a rich woman. Hey guys, welcome to the Rogue 3 podcast, where we discuss everything Star Wars with a positive outlook on the saga we love. I'm Austin.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Austin.
And this week we are going to be discussing the novel Sanctuary, a Bad Batch novel that was written by Lamar Giles. Before we jump into that, though, what have you guys been doing this week in Star Wars?
I have been reading Aftermath, Empire's End. After Austin, you had listened to it and told me a lot about it and how much you enjoyed it. I had just never finished that trilogy, and it felt incomplete. I kind of know how the story goes, so not everything's going to be a surprise. But I've been getting into that, so I'm on part 2 now, maybe 1/3 of the way through the book. And it just feels like I should have finished it a long time ago, but just never did. Right. Like that's kind of a funny feeling where it's like, I should have read this way long ago in a galaxy far, far away, but never did.
It came out right after Rogue One, and I just didn't ever get around to it. And I feel like it would have really helped my enjoyment of the sequel trilogy. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think you might need to revisit those sometimes, because like at one point those were like the books. Like there weren't very many books to be
had.
Like
the first new story that's not a tie-in, really. It was a new kind of original idea.
I feel like the original thought when that was coming out was that this was almost like the new Thrawn trilogy. It wasn't at all.
It was not.
Right.
I really like Aftermath. It's not the Thrawn trilogy. I liked the books. I know that they have mixed reviews for some people. I think they were fun. I really like the characters. So I had a good time. Like we said, I finished the book last week. I thought it was really a fun ending, and I'm excited to see what happens next, if they ever have a next for these characters 10 years later.
We don't know. We don't think that there's going to be a next for Snap, unfortunately. But
oh no!
But he is heavily featured in the only post Rise of Skywalker story that we have at this moment. Although in about a week's time from the release of this episode, we will then have a new one. So that's really
very
exciting.
I'm really excited for that one.
Austin, what have you guys been up to?
You? Yeah, what have you been doing, Austin?
Nothing too crazy this week. I did one afternoon when I was doing some laundry, and I kind of just wanted something on. I threw on some Clone Wars, as one does, and I threw on kind of my favorite set of episodes. They were kind of just like, Austin, if you could just have a couple episodes of Clone Wars, what would they be about? And so those were season 3, episodes 10 through 12, which is Heroes on Both Sides, Pursuit of Peace, and Night Sisters. So that's 2 Padme-focused political episodes, kind of explore separatist politics, some political intrigue there, and then kind of like a major tonal shift to the introduction of the Night Sisters, and Ventress's kind of shift from being a Sith assassin to being her brief stint as a witch. And so those are just some fun episodes, and it's always fun to go back and look at those.
For me this week, I have been urgently, desperately trying to finish today's book, and I finished it just hours ago. Sanctuary, a Bad Batch novel. So that's pretty much what I did. So that leads us into today's major topic. We're going to be talking about Sanctuary, a Bad Batch novel, giving our thoughts on it. In general, right up front, this was written by Lamar Giles. It was released on August 5th of 2025, and it's set after the events of the second season episode. It's called Pabu. I believe it is episode 13, so it's about halfway through the season. And Clone Force 99 is trying to raise funds to restore Pabu after a devastating tsunami, and when they come into contact with former separatist ISB agents and other dangerous individuals across the galaxy. This is Lamar's first Star Wars novel. He previously wrote a short story for Return of the Jedi from a Certain Point of View, and he's also written several other young adult novels. As a founder of the nonprofit We Need Diverse Books, which is an excellent cause. Upfront, non-spoiler impressions. If you haven't read it, this is a safe place to stay for a second. I do, as always, encourage you to read the book before you listen to a full review. You always want to make your own opinions about a book. Don't let someone else's review tell you what to think. Okay, non-spoiler impressions. Well, I'll start us off. I really enjoyed the book. It absolutely felt like an arc of episodes from The Bad Batch. Lamar seemed to really understand who these characters were. He gave them all very unique personalities. And, they did already have unique personalities, but it can be very easy to have clones slip into clone. And so it was nice to see very unique characters. I was especially smitten by Celia Moten. I was very intrigued by her character, and I would be very intrigued to see where her character would go. Mike, what'd you think?
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed this book. We've read a few together, and I honestly think that this is the best tie-in book I have ever read that has pulled the characters and they're exactly as they were in the show. Like, I was floored by how all of the Bad Batch, Omega, Tech, Wrecker, Hunter, all of them are exactly the same. I'm not like, this is a different version of the character, or a different age of the character, or anything like that. I think Lamar Giles nailed their personalities so much, and that doesn't always happen with tie-in books. He must have taken a lot of time to watch that show and know how these characters respond to things, how they interact together, because I was really floored by that. And the overall story I really enjoyed. It's really hard to find an era to fit a book into this Bad Batch story, because it's not like there's big gaps or anything like that in their story. And this was the perfect moment, the perfect time to do it, and such a great story to do it. Set after the episode Pabu, one of my favorites, where they finally seem to find a place where they can relax. And so I can't gush about it enough. Reading it, I was just like, oh my gosh, like, this is exactly how I picture the characters from that show. And that's not an easy task. I am really astounded by it.
Yeah, for me, I'm not primed to enjoy Bad Batch. Like
Mhm.
clones and like that type of story, that is not the part of Star Wars I gravitate towards. But like, despite that, I always really enjoyed the TV show. And when they announced this book, I was not like particularly excited about it. I'm like, it's cool, another Star Wars book, that's fun. But just like the TV show, I found myself really enjoying this story. Like, it really felt like they were just like, it's like felt like they took like they had like a plot for some episodes they didn't make, and then just made a book out of it instead of script. And yeah, I mean, just echoing what you guys said, it's just a perfect, like, even the cadence of the way the characters spoke, and like the plotting, like, it felt very like TV show style plotting. And so it really did feel just like an episode of the TV show, but like projected into my brain.
It's so funny that this is a tie-in book for a TV show, which is a spin-off from another animated TV show, right? Like, and it's so well done. I am surprised, and I hope that Lamar Giles will continue to write more Star Wars books, because he nailed the family dynamic of these characters that was really present in the show. And you really feel it in the book too, of how they interact with each other and all of that. And so I hope that there's another opportunity to bring another story forward that he would find interesting to want to do for Star Wars. Because I would love to see original characters or something like that from him, because he got these characters so well done. I think that would be really exciting.
I want to see him do a Rebels novel. I feel like Rebels is like
I could see him doing a good job.
Like, Rebels has so many things where you can do like this. Like, I was even better than Bad Batch, where you can squeeze in like an adventure the characters had that we didn't see on screen.
And there aren't any. There are no Rebels tie-in books, really.
Yeah,
New Dawn is fully
a prequel.
Before.
Yeah,
there's no full novel or anything like that. You have Servants of the Empire, but those are minuscule. And so that would be a really good era for him too.
Yeah, but we fully endorse him. Lucasfilm, if you're listening, like, give him more.
You're not listening to us, but maybe one day.
You don't know that. So it seems like actually each TV show seems to have their own little like a blank novel. Like Dark Disciple is Dark Disciple, a Clone Wars novel.
True.
A New Dawn, a Rebels novel. Except for Resistance. Poor Resistance doesn't have anything.
Yeah.
Austin's unhappy
One
about
day.
that.
Yeah.
I don't
Also,
think
if you're
so.
listening, Lucasfilm, give us a Resistance.
I'd like to see those characters pop up again.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, well, this is our third book review, and we started to spice things up a little bit. So we will be changing our format up just a little bit for book reviews. We will be splitting these reviews up into 4 chapters.
Yeah, we had talked about like trying to create a format, and so what we're going to do is chapter 1 is going to be all about the events of the book, the plot, the storyline, kind of just going through and reiterating what happens in the book as the actual just straight up plot, basically. Chapter 2, we're going to be looking at the characters, and I'm glad we're starting with this book because the characters were so well nailed that that's going to be really easy to do. And so talking about the characters, what we liked most, what we saw in them, kind of things like that we really liked. Chapter 3 is going to be connections to the broader galaxy. So we've talked before about how these books are always interconnected to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy, the rest of this canon. And so talking about what that's going to be. And then something we haven't done before really formally is chapter 4 is going to be talking about the lessons the novel is trying to teach us. So a la Clone Wars, where there's a big lesson that appears on screen and tries to slap you in the face with what this story is going to be about, what you learn from this story. You're going to see, we're going to talk about what our lesson we learned was and what we think the novel is trying to teach us about these characters, but also about us, our lives, and things just going on as people. And so those are going to be the 4 chapters that we do. We're going to test it out, see how we like it. We may tweak it here and there, but we're really excited to kind of kick off with chapter 1, plot and story. This is a perfect spot to start because the plot is so centered with timeline wise. We know exactly when it happens. It's in the opening where it's 18 BBY immediately after the events of that episode Pabu, where there was a tsunami and the Bad Batch is trying to make some money to be able to restore the island. So let's dive into some plot.
Yeah. First of all, plot-wise, did either of you rewatch the episodes this falls between?
I should have.
I should have. I thought about that earlier, and I was like, did not find time to do that. I am very intrigued to go rewatch those 2 and kind of see how they bookend the book. But starting in 18 BBY, the Bad Batch is already on another mission with our good friend Fee, who we all love, of course. Yeah. I do at least.
She's such a good character and a good like contrast to all the clones, both in the show, but also throughout the book, that she's very much a kind of a dissenting voice, a different perspective from them, which is very good for them.
Yeah. We're starting off, the Bad Batch are, well, first they're trying to raise money for Pabu, and they're trying to do little jobs to make that happen. So we are trying to infiltrate an auction to win the Carradine mortar of the whole book. And each of the Bad Batch members has a unique role to fill.
Yeah, they've each as a mission goes, they each have their roles, they each have their specific duty. Fee and Tech are kind of leading the auction. They're appearing as though they're actual auctioneers, and they've tried to hack into the system to siphon money away from everyone else at this auction to use that money to bid on the Carradine Cup. But it doesn't quite work out for them. Their code does not work, and it keeps getting up. They realize one of the other people at this auction is working for the auctioneer, raising the bar. Keep voting, keep betting. So they have to keep going higher and higher, and they have to keep going higher, and they can't turn it off. And so their system really fails. Like, they are not prepared for when it doesn't go right, which is kind of a trend throughout this book of their kind of plot. Their plan does not work out the right way, and then they just have to kind of blow things up and try and get out of there.
And that's pretty typical of the Bad Batch, that their plans don't ever go toward the plan.
They essentially just have to steal it and then run away. And they're able to do that and steal this mortar that's of a religious significance, but they don't know much about it. They don't really fully know who it's going to. They are going to be passing it off to another person eventually, because this job came from Fee, who they're still kind of learning. Fee told them about Pabu, gave them the safety of that place, but working with her is still fairly new for them. Outside of their clone family. So there's a lot of tension when this doesn't go right between Hunter and Fee, kind of these two strong voices in this group of people.
Hunter is also a dissenting character in this story. He was especially moody throughout this book, and he really wasn't happy with anyone.
Well, and it's because this was not his plan. Like, Hunter's always been in charge of the batch, and he's always the one that's been figuring out what they're going to do. And this time he's having to trust Fee. And Fee, things are kind of working out for them in the end, but there's a lot of things that go wrong, which Hunter is blaming totally on her. A good example of that is where they go when they go off planet, which is to pick up 2 passengers. Fee's bright idea is to double up on jobs, so they're going to deliver this package. They're also going to pick up some passengers and transport them to their destination as well.
Which, if the job goes as planned, that's really a great idea.
Yeah,
getting 2 birds, 1 stone.
Book.
And a boring book, but guess what? It doesn't go as planned.
Yeah, Hunter doesn't trust the 2 people that they pick up pretty immediately, and that's like Austin said, a trend throughout the book, that he has a pretty severe lack of trust in a lot of people and is unsure. And when we meet them, we don't really, he doesn't know who these people are. He didn't choose this job, and so that kind of puts him on edge quite a bit.
And they are named Sohee and Kuto. They are a pregnant woman and a masked man, I guess would be the best way to describe him. Like, he's like shrouded, and you can't really see what his deal is. And she's not just a little pregnant; she is like on the cusp of childbirth pregnant.
Yep.
This is one of those instances where I really like illustrations, and I wish we could have had some kind of illustration of these characters. Sometimes with these books, there's a Barnes and Noble edition that comes with a poster with some of the characters on it, and this one unfortunately didn't seem to have that edition. But Sohee was a what was it, Mike?
Kashiri. Kashiri. She's appeared 2 times now, but only in book. And we've talked about it before. Whenever an alien species shows up, like, please don't have it be just in a book. Like, you got to have really good descriptions of what they look like. And I'll say I didn't get that much description from this. Maybe I haven't read Battle Scars, which is the other appearance that a Kashiri makes. And I read that it's a somewhat important character to that book. So maybe there's a lot of description of what they look like there, but we don't know very much of what they actually look like from this.
In my head, she was a woman.
She was a woman.
Yeah.
I know mine too.
And it doesn't really matter.
This race is from Legends. If you go on their Legends page, you can see some pictures, and it's essentially just purple humans. There's nothing super exciting.
So we know that when the Bad Batch pick up these 2, they make their way to a new planet, and it's called Dallo, which I had not been familiar with that planet before this book. I think, is it a brand new planet? Is that correct?
It has a one sentence
as a one-sentence Wikipedia article, so there's lots there. Truthfully, it was a rather, as much as we hyped up his characters and everything, the 2 planets that we had, Dallo and Trith, were really the 2 new ones. They didn't do a whole lot for me. They weren't super exciting, and they didn't need to be. So I do want to make that clear. They didn't need to be exciting at all. I don't need them to appear again.
They were plot planets. They were not.
They were plot
world building planets. Yeah,
and that's okay.
Exactly.
That's okay. They fit into the novel. I do want to mention before we move on. So he did mention that she's on the run. She says that she was a senatorial aide for Senator Kataman, who I just looked up before this podcast, did make one other appearance in Revenge of the Sith, and did have a picture on his Wikipedia article. So he is a real character. And he was a part of the delegation of 2000. And obviously from Mask of Fear, we know that members of the delegation of 2000 were not so lucky after the events of Revenge of the Sith. So she was on the run at this point.
They're going after these dissenting voices. And, this was someone that worked for one of those people. So, of course, they're on the run. And then we're headed towards towards Dallow.
Uh-huh.
But we also meet a few other characters before the Bad Batch actually gets there.
We do.
We meet an ISB agent named Cedral Crane, and we meet a wealthy industrialist. And I assume that she's human. I'm not actually sure if it's said or not. And her name is Celia Moten.
Crane comes into the story because he's investigating the money situation that happened on Posium Prime, where the gambling took place, where the auction took place.
Yeah.
And then Celia is on Dow. Celia is the buyer of the mortar.
Yeah.
We meet Celia as she is talking to Fee's contact, Ven Ullman. And unfortunately, he meets a not so nice end. She doesn't need him, and so it's time for him to go. And we're going to learn a little bit more about that as the book goes on.
When the Bad Batch arrives on Dallow, they try and bring it to and find Fee's contact, but they can't find him, and so they just go to her complex. And they're actually picked up, I believe, right? They're picked up and go to her complex. So they're kind of whisked away by her bodyguard, yeah.
Just Omega, Tech, and Fee are actually going into the complex. And as they're going in, they note it's weird. Like, this is a weird house. And clearly this person has a lot of money. And there's like a lot of scenes of like death and destruction around there, like art and stuff. And they eventually meet her in her office, where they want to know where Ben is. And she kind of entertains him, but doesn't really mention it. But then Fee kind of has an idea that he's been killed by her. And so she's the one who wants the mortar. And so she makes it pretty clear to them that they are also going to die.
And at this point, we know that Wrecker and Hunter are separate from the group. They were over kind of watching from afar. And then similarly to the auction, everything blows up, that they have to get out of there. They have to fight for their lives. And Wrecker is able to get there and basically blow up a hole in the wall for them to escape through. And everything, all of her artifacts and things have been broken and destroyed, and kind of really puts her in a angry mode. She has very much an angry streak. And so she's bent for revenge from that moment on against all of these people. And then that's kind of when Crane enters.
Yep.
Is that what you were going to say, Austin?
Yeah. So Crane shows up, and he lands in the like shipyard, which is where the Marauder, the Bad Batch ship, is. So they kind of cross paths in that. He goes to Celia's compound to figure out what happened as the Bad Batch is able to escape.
And so Crane's a ISB agent. He is going to be investigating, but he also kind of gets a second investigation. He's investigating the auction and what happened there. But with Moten being a very well-connected individual, he's also instructed that we had another agent that had made contact with her and has disappeared. And we don't know what happened to them. So he has a team of other kind of junior ISB agents that they start trying to tap into her communications and keep tabs on her of what was going on. Where did that other agent go?
And another thing of note is Celia is very happy to entertain the Empire in her home. And she's very big on name dropping. She's like, and she's just like talking on and on about all the people she knows. And she's like, I don't forget the exact scenario. She's like, why don't we just get Sheev on the phone?
Get Sheev on the phone.
Referring to the Emperor by his first name.
And then if they can't get
really,
Sheev, we're going to get Mass. Let's get Mass.
So she's really big into the name dropping. The vibe I kind of got, like, in this scenario, it really felt like the old, like, Tim Burton era Batman movies where you have, like, two villains that were very different, like, interacting together, that were just kind of campy and over the top. That was, like, the vibe of seeing these two characters interact. It was really fun. You have Crane, who like could not give less of a crap about anything this woman is saying. He just needs the information out of her, and she's like trying to wine and dine him, and like but she has a lot of power in the situation too. Like, she's not like a silly, frivolous person. Like, she actually has a good bit of control over the situation.
at this point, the team they're really not getting along. So coming back to the Bad Batch, Hunter is extremely unhappy, that we're starting to find out what exactly is going on with Sohee and Kuto. It turns out that maybe they're not exactly who they said they were. So he reveals that she was a separatist, and she did terrible things for the separatists. She killed many clones, and then she was assigned the senatorial position to spy on the Republic for the separatists.
Well, to clarify, she was a separatist spy. She not only killed clones directly; she was feeding the separatists information that got them.
That got them.
She was not she wasn't like a combatant.
No.
She was a spy that was giving them information.
Puts the Bad Batch on, on alert. Like, this is our enemy. It's only 1 year since the Clone Wars ended, and now we have an enemy person on our ship. And then the kicker is Kuto reveals himself as a clone, and there's a lot of confliction and a lot of feelings being had at that moment, where it's like, this is a separatist and this is our enemy. This is a clone and this is our brother. What's going on here?
And they're in love. They're in love.
Yeah.
And it's their baby together. His name is Ponder. He goes by Ponder. I thought it was interesting. At first, he gives his CT number, and then he's like, no, your name. And I was like, Ponder.
I like that.
Ponder. And I like the continual emphasis on clone names and how important those names are versus designations.
Another, I guess, important thing that we've kind of forgotten to mention is that Crane is very invested in Sohee and Ponder. The reason why he's doing that is because Sohee was he was her spy master. Like, he was the one working for the separatist that had her doing all the stuff. And he calls her Gala. So that was her birth name. She chooses to go by Sohee, so we'll refer to her as Sohee, but we'll call Ponder going forward.
He calls her his daughter.
Yeah.
And we come to see that he has many children throughout the galaxy that he's basically been training. I don't know if you guys got this feeling. I got very much a Stranger Things vibe with Papa and the different numbered children, and how they all referred to him as their father and they were his children, and he was training them to do just awful things. And so that piece felt a lot like Stranger Things. We have several flashbacks throughout the book that are very interesting. It's interesting to see how hard he is on them. And he is clearly his favorite. It's this weird relationship. It's not really love. It's his love of her power rather than, or her ability rather than his actual love for Sohee.
They are heading to the planet Trith to meet up with another one of his former children, whose name's Jatil. He's a doctor. So he's now actively in labor, and they're trying really desperately to get there.
And Sohee and Ponder had taken the Marauder, had knocked out all of the Bad Batch and had taken it under their control. And then that happens, and they're like, okay, we can't get to where we were going. We need help. Where do we go? And they go to Trith. Now they're fully we just need help. We're gonna give in. We're not just gonna try and take over, because they've been adversarial this whole time, and now they're starting to work together. When they get to Trith, they all are kind of trying to get her to the doctor, who hadn't been in contact really for a long time, and he starts to help her out, actually, which I found surprising. I thought, this is gonna be a bad situation, and then he's actually helping her and getting her through, because she's very, very close to dying.
She is. And Omega really comes in here. Her training, her background is in medicine, and so it's really cool to get to see Omega practicing clone medicine again, and her knowledge of clone physiology is what helps save Sohee's life and the baby's life.
While this is all happening, Crane and Celia are still kind of having their back and forth, and Crane's getting very impatient with the situation. We find out what Celia is trying to leverage from him is she's noticed a lot of her businesses are being impacted by the Empire buying extreme amounts of materials, and she's trying to get information from Crane about what's going on because she wants to become an imperial governor. That's like kind of her goal. She wants to move up the political ladder. And they kind of reach an impasse situation. And Crane reaches out to Yularen. He's like, you've got to stop poking around in this. You've got to get a hold of the situation. Getting the Bad Batch is your top priority. Go to Trith and get the Bad Batch.
It was interesting to get this early look at people noticing that something's not right as far as the Empire's project is going.
This is 18 years before the Death Star's complete.
Exactly. So
this is shades of Dedra Meero 15 years before it happens, and she learns about what they're building.
It's very interesting to see someone notice, they're looking through the books and the Empire isn't, it's almost like the Empire is not being super careful, which we of course realized that, in other media, Krennic was not very super careful. He should have been more careful perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to see this early on, the Empire wasn't as careful. And so when they hear that Celia is noticing something, suddenly they're alarmed and they're taking this extremely seriously. Originally, Crane was talking to one of his accomplices there, and his accomplice escalates it to Yularen. It's interesting to get a peek of Yularen in 18 BBY, considering that we see him as a good guy just 2 years before, and now he's just all on board with the Empire. It's very... I've always thought about that. Like, how did that change affect him? How did the change from Republic to Empire impact him, and how did his loyalty so quickly change to support the Empire? Because he seems like a really honest, decent man in the Clone Wars. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, he kind of commands Crane to basically to leave. And so he's like, okay, Crane's like, all right, we're out. Like, let's go. And they're preparing to go. And she's like, well, why don't you come on my ship with me? Like, you can hang out with me. Like, your guys will go on their ship. And then they take off. And as the ISB ship with all of Crane's associates, she's like, oh, and I forgot to mention, we affected and interrupted the hyperdrive on that ship. And then it blows up right in front of him, and then they shoot into hyperspace. It's just like, whoa, like I wasn't seeing that coming, because Yularen had told him, as soon as you get out, like, contact me. And he's just trapped the whole time. Like, he's this puppet master character, but he is having his strings pulled by Celia Moten, and it's really an interesting dynamic. And then they're on their way to Trith to try and reclaim their assets.
So we're on Trith, and thankfully so he has had a healthy baby. Everything's going okay. Unfortunately, our friend Jatiel has told Crane where to find them, and that's why Crane is coming after them in the first place. So they have to make a plan to escape as Crane is arriving. Thankfully, the Bad Batch is able to use their skills and escape. I thought Hunter and Fee had a really interesting scene with Celia where they go on board her yacht and they have to... Tech and Fee. That makes more sense. They go on board her yacht and have a lovely conversation with her, and she gets so angry. It's interesting to see her anger flare up throughout the novel. And they're able to overwhelm her.
They go on the yacht because they're blocking like the hyperspace lane. Like, the Bad Batch can't leave the planet.
Yeah,
that's right. And so they need to shut it down, like whatever the blocker is on the ship. That's why they go on the ship. And at that point, the Bad Batch is causing distractions around the planet, trying to confuse Crane on where they are.
Yeah, Crane's brought local stormtroopers that he's brought under his control, and they're trying to track down Wrecker and Omega and the baby and Sohi.
So a couple of things to note. One, the money they had stolen originally was useless. Hunter was really devastated. They were going to get back to Pabu empty-handed. A good thing that Tech noticed on Celia's ship was they were able to pull money from her, so they were able to give that to Pabu, so they weren't going to go empty-handed. Notably, Crane gets into a very physical altercation with Hunter and Sohi. And Sohi's like, a couple hours post-birth, she's really struggling. She gives herself these injections that kind of give her like a stimulus to fight through the pain, but it's getting close to killing her. And she's able to withstand that. And then Ponder's able to come in and shoot Crane, and they're able to get off planet.
I was disappointed that Crane was killed because I thought he was such a good kind of character, almost in a way like a Thrawn character, where like he is able to see these threads and make these connections that others are missing. I really wanted him to survive, to see him in another story at some point, because I thought he was such a good new character that's able to see these pathways that others just don't see. But there was a contrast where he said, I don't really care about the art stuff. That doesn't mean anything to me, which is a direct opposite to Thrawn, who tries to learn as much as he can about art to learn his enemies. But they both can see things where others miss them. But unfortunately, he doesn't make it.
Well, I think this is probably a good transition point to our discussion about character. When we move to chapter 2.
Yeah, let's go to chapter 2. So chapter 2, we're going to talk all about characters. So obviously we have the Bad Batch as the main gist of this book, but we also have, as we talked about, Sohi and Ponder as a team. We have Crane and we have Celia Moten as the kind of main cast of the book. So who for you guys stood out as kind of your favorite character throughout this book?
Well, my favorite character was Celia Moten. I thought she was a phenomenal villain. She goes on to describe herself as the god of connections, which I think is really interesting, but even darker, and it gets really dark. She enjoys releasing people's souls, I guess. Is that the way she says it?
Yeah. She collects souls.
She collects souls. And that explains why she's killing. Why does she want to kill Fee so badly? Why did she kill Fee's contact, Ben Ullman? You know, she is this powerful woman who, that sounds really dark and powerful there. She's really not that dark and powerful. She's just a rich woman who wants to control people. And I think there's something so fascinating about that. I think I feel like there's almost some real world parallels there where we have people who think they can do whatever they want because they have money. And so that was an interesting dive into a character who had nothing but wealth, and that's what, you know, essentially allowed her to do the things that she did.
Well, I think what's really notable too about her is she has all this wealth and connections. Like, she knows the Emperor and everything. Fee and Tech are able to dispatch her really easily.
Yeah,
like she has no physical combat skills or anything, so they're able to they take her out really quickly. I mean, she's like really cowardly about it.
I like her connections too. I just like the idea that like she thinks she's really good friends with like Sheev, and the Emperor just gets another text from her and is just like, oh my god, you have to stop.
She probably like had a lot of positive interaction with him during like the Clone Wars or whatever, where she like got to go to his office and be wined and dined or whatever reason,
which is a very different Sheev.
And it's clearly not enough because he sends his most trusted bodyguard, you could say, or emissary, as they call him, Darth Vader, to dispatch her. She learned too much. And so her wealth, her connections is not going to protect her. And so she learned too much. And so that's how she unfortunately ends as well. Who, again, great character. Would have loved to see them maybe we can see her in a prequel story or pop up somewhere.
I would have loved to see what she did next.
Yeah.
I would have loved to see this petty rich woman like slowly uncovering secrets about the Empire. What about y'all? Who's your favorite character?
For me, I think it was probably Crane. I think he was a really interesting villain. Not to retread everything that Mike mentioned earlier, but I feel like he was very similar but distinctly different from Cyril and Andor, where he was like very dedicated to the Empire because like order was his priority, but it was in a very like distinct way. Like Cyril, I think at his heart believed it was good. Like he like thought he was like the order the Empire brings like provides stability to the galaxy, and like protecting that is like the top priority. Crane did not care about the structure of the galaxy. He believed in like the order that he could provide. Like he wanted to have the control over the situation, and as we saw, that was faulty. Like he thought he had control of the situation, but Celia took it from him. He thought he had control of it later, but he could not control, so he couldn't tie her down. She was still an independent person. And so I thought that made for an interesting dichotomy.
I liked learning that he changed from separatist to empire because he thought that's going to be more helpful for me, right? It's about him, not the greater organization or anything like that, but it's like that's going to put me in the most advantageous position. And so he just abandons that cause to go to this other one. So I'm going to cheat because I can, and I'm going to say my favorite characters were Fee and Tech.
Yeah.
I love seeing like clones have love interests, and Fee was such a fun one that we barely really see Tech reciprocate. Honestly, in the show, it's clear she calls him brown eyes all the time. It's so affectionate. She clearly has a massive crush on him, and he doesn't always seem to reciprocate. He doesn't always seem to acknowledge it necessarily. But I thought Lamar Giles did a really good job of like kind of diving in. There's been a lot of talk that maybe Tech is considered to be autistic. And I thought he wrote that really well. That was one of the things I noticed right from the start is like kind of hearing or seeing how Tech's responding to these advances and other things going on. I thought that was a really cool thing that he was able to do was make these two characters have a lot of interaction together and see this kind of a relationship develop from there. And by the end, they have an understanding, it seems. And Tech is kind of talking about like how he's feeling something. And I really liked having that because it felt satisfying. The way that Tech goes in the Bad Batch, he dies before we really get to see this fully come to fruition. But this is satisfying for me. This is what I hoped they would have been. And so I'm very, very glad that he included and wrote that into this book because I think it was perfect.
I think due to the fact that like, we didn't get to have any Tech in season 3, like it was really nice that he was, I would say him and Hunter were the most prevalent members of the crew in this book. And they both had nice, like I think Hunter had a good arc in the story of learning. We didn't talk about it too much in the overall plot, but Hunter was struggling with the status of the Bad Batch was moving beyond like Omega was really like blossoming as her own person now, and Tech was starting to have this thing with Fee, and Hunter was very dedicated to this life on Pabu, but not everybody else was 100% on board with that. And I think learning to come to grips with that was kind of like the arc of the book, and I think it was a good story for him. I feel like Hunter was not always the one learning in the show, and so it was good to see that here.
Yeah,
I was a little disappointed that we didn't get very much Wrecker. I know he's not an overly complex character, but he really didn't have very much to do during this novel. If I were to change anything about the novel, it would be to have a little bit more of Wrecker, give him just a little bit more of a substantial role where he has to face himself.
His fear of heights.
There you go. Combat his fear of heights.
Right.
I don't know. Just a little bit more. Just a little bit more I would have liked.
He did have the best joke.
I see that.
What was that?
It was the I think it's with Ponder where he's like, we're going to do a medium-sized explosion. It says medium compared to what? It said small and large. that was a great.
Yeah, that was so good.
I read that out loud to Austin when I read that a couple days ago.
All right, let's move on to Chapter 3: Connections to a Larger Galaxy. What were some of the connections to other Star Wars stories that you guys saw? Obviously, we've talked a lot about how this connects very, very deeply to the Bad Batch, but what were some of those other little Easter eggs, teases, things that this story connects to and creates that larger web of a galaxy?
So the biggest one for me was that this book tied in so much with the Delegation of 2000, and we got a Padme mention. Like I would have never guessed in a million years we get a Padme mention,
indirect mention,
story.
But
it doesn't always happen.
Yeah,
close enough.
Yeah, they're never gonna. They never say her name.
They don't. I know. Even Obi-Wan, the Obi-Wan Kenobi show wouldn't say her name.
Yeah, I spent. Anyway, it was so cool that he was working for the senator, and which I didn't even realize until looking up for this episode that he was actually like, in the movies, but she was working for a senator in the Delegation of 2000. Just hearing her talk about that experience and how the senator from Naboo like took time out of her day to like listen to her and talk about her concerns, and per usual, Padme had a transformative effect on people.
She sure did.
And so that was a special little moment.
And Ponder also had a little bit of a connection to the it's not the Wounded Warriors bill.
Yeah,
Wounded
But
Clones.
talked about Wounded Clones. Yeah, that was another one that she championed.
Obviously, planets are a big thing in Star Wars. We get lots of planets.
Mm-hmm.
Magito is where they pick up Sohi and Ponder, which is where Ki-Adi-Mundi was killed in Episode 3. They're trying to get to Felucia, which is where Aayla Secura was killed in Episode 3.
There's a Jedi killed on
every planet. That's where we have this.
Order 66, greatest
Order
hits
66.
list. Let's just meet them all.
Hosnian Prime is where the auction house was. That was the Piparu auction house. Hosnian Prime is, of course, the planet where the New Republic is led by the time of Episode 7, and that is eventually destroyed in Episode 7. We do get a flashback to Gala's training on Batuu. A little shout out to Vardos. We see Vardos mentioned in this one. That is, of course, the planet that Iden Versio from Battlefront 2 is from, and we do get to visit Vardos in Battlefront 2.
I think one of my favorite connections, it's not explicit, but we know that the Bad Batch is aware of Cut Lawquane, the clone who was a deserter and had a relationship with Sue and was raising these two kids on Seleucami in the Clone Wars. And Ponder is very similar to that situation. He kind of left service, has a child, is trying to raise that with another person. And so like I liked seeing kind of those parallels of clones trying to integrate into typical life, average life, and seeing their combinations. So the Bad Batch has run into several people who have gone through this situation and having clones develop relationships with people and romantic. And so that was a fun one that I was making throughout the book.
And this is the first time I think that we've seen a clone reproduce, because Cut Lawquane didn't. Those are his stepchildren, so he didn't reproduce there.
Half human, so but not his.
Exactly. I did think that was interesting. I often wonder if they had intended for those to be his kids and they realized the timeline does not make sense at
Somebody actually that meeting said actually there's not enough time.
Sam Witwer was there
actually. So that was interesting. The emissary. This is I don't know if this is really a connection, but as soon as that shuttle landed, they mentioned that the Emperor's emissary is coming. And so I knew immediately this must be Darth Vader. That sequence is so incredible. The way that he paints the picture of Darth Vader without mentioning it as Darth Vader. You know, it's just scary. And it's interesting to see him eventually approach Celia. And by the end of the novel, she's not dead. You know, he basically mentions that he wants information from her. And she is almost certainly going to die after she's given away everything that she knows. I love that sequence.
I mean, it's Star Wars. There's always connections to other little things, other nods, other things. And that's what, we've talked about the Lucasfilm Story Group doing such a good job helping authors who may not know all of that stuff. No one knows all that stuff except maybe Pablo Hidalgo. But I love looking for them and seeing them. So in every book, there's always these little mentions that I'm sure I passed right over.
But I think, the author did a great job of like spreading the Easter eggs around. Like if you love whichever trilogy is your favorite, it's in there. If you love the theme parks of the video games, it's all mixed in there. That's a fun time.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the author, do you guys want to move on to the last chapter? Chapter 4, Lessons Learned. So let's talk a little bit about what we think Lamar Giles was trying to tell us through this book. What lesson would pop up on that first page as the intro to a Clone Wars episode would tell you exactly what you're going to be learning
the
about.
Clone Wars fortune cookie.
What did you guys... Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I love that. Like George has talked about how it's always about learning something. And so what would you guys say are your lessons learned from this book?
For me, the one I wrote down, it's not very poetic, but the theme is true, I think, which is controlling others will not bring you order or safety. And I think the theme of control was like really all throughout the novel, primarily through Hunter, Celia, and Crane. Hunter is at the beginning of the novel, he's like trying to keep a tight leash on the Bad Batch, which notably Tech Omega and Wrecker. And he's really unhappy about how the plans are going with Thee. He doesn't want Thee making plans at all. He's like, we just got to get the money. We got to get back. Got to stay on Pabu. And he never had a discussion with anybody about whether they wanted to settle down. They've had this like kind of spacefaring life, going from place to place, having adventures. And like for example, Omega's like, I don't want to settle down. Like I've lived on Camino my whole life, and I didn't leave until 6 months ago. I want to see the galaxy. And Hunter never really took the time to see that perspective. And by the end of the novel, he kind of sees the error of his ways. But you contrast that with Celia and Crane. They were both very obsessed with control of the situation. Crane, through like information and like kind of like abuse of his the spies that he was training, his children that he called them, he really like beat them into submission and felt he had like absolute control. Like he thought he'd be able to show up and just kind of command Gala into doing what he wanted her to do. And she's her own person. You can't do that. And that led to his downfall and his death. And with Celia, she thought her money and connections would keep her protected and gave her, and it did give her control of the situation. But at the end of the day, a blaster bolt's a blaster bolt. You can't escape that. Like nobody's getting away from Vader. So,
right.
I don't think Ezra's going to come through the world between worlds to save Celia.
No.
So that was my my theme.
So I had two. My first one was a sanctuary is not found, it is built and earned. So I really focused on the idea of the title of sanctuary and what does that mean? So for them, Pabu was a place of peace, and they come from a life of war. And are they able just to walk into this peace without creating it for themselves? And this novel is the answer to that question. They had to create it for themselves. They had to help fund Pabu. As soon as they came to this paradise, it was immediately destroyed. It's almost as if they brought war with them in the form of a tsunami. And so they had to help rebuild Pabu and create peace there, and kind of let go of that life of war. And that's kind of what I saw this novel kind of leading us to. Obviously, we still have another season and a half of the Bad Batch after this. But the big struggle here for me was Hunter. Hunter's struggle seemed to be the main focus of the novel, and Hunter had to learn to trust his allies, and that's where my second theme comes from. Trust in your allies is the greatest sanctuary. It wasn't until Hunter learned to trust Sohi and Ponder, and it wasn't until Hunter learned to trust what Omega wants that he was finally not a moody piece of crap, which he was for most of the novel. And that was nice.
Yeah, I like that. I think that kind of plays into some of mine, both of yours in a way. Turns out we read the same book, so that makes sense. But mine was, you're not who you have been, but who you can become. Because each of these characters, each of these main people, we see them kind of talk about their former life and the life that they're looking for or towards. So we see that with the Bad Batch, that they were soldiers, they were a squad, and this squad has been broken up. Crosshair's gone, Echo is gone, and Hunter is struggling, like you said, with his role of leader. And is he a leader, or should he be a leader? And he's trying to figure out, how do I be a part of this group but not command everyone, not have to be the leader? And so he's trying to figure out how to transition, how to change from who he was to who he wants to be. We see that even with Omega. We see that with Tech, that Tech's kind of trying to learn, how do I have feelings for this person? How does that change who I am? And we see that with the other people. We see it a lot with Sohi, talking about her past as a spy, and that she wants to get out of it and she wants to move on and go and just have a life for her daughter. And she really almost gives that up for her daughter. But she's trying to, again, transition from who she was to who she wants to become. And we also see that kind of with Celia Moten and with Crane, but in more of a negative way. Crane goes from being a separatist spy master to a spy master, but in the Empire, and trying to just create these kind of devious things. He wants to rise up. He wants to hold power and kind of be someone who he wasn't, which is working on behalf of the Republic or the Empire. He wants to abandon that past of being a separatist and move into that and be that more, even if there's still some connections to his past with Sohi. But we also see that with Celia Moten, that she is trying to build herself up. Like, she's, really wealthy, but she wants to be like the governor of this sector of space. She wants to be in complete control. And so she's trying to see herself as being far more important and build herself up to be more important than she really is. So she's trying to leave this kind of smaller, although very wealthy life, to be in control and be this very important person. And so we kind of see all of these characters trying to transition from one life to another in either positive or negative ways, and trying to figure out, how do you do that? How do you become the person that you want to be? How do you move on from your past and a box that you were stuck in and escape that? And that's kind of what I pulled out of this, is all of those characters trying to break out of this box that they were in and become something new.
That was good.
But I liked it.
Yeah.
It was a good book.
It was a great book.
Yeah.
Loved it. I absolutely recommend it. If you like The Bad Batch, you should definitely read it. Even as someone who's not a big clone person, I thought it was really fun, and I had a good time with the characters.
Yeah, I'll hit on it again. The family aspect of this book was
that's
really
the heart
superb.
of the book.
Yeah, it really is. So if you want a family-oriented Star Wars story and how characters are trying to get along with each other, this is a really good one to pick up. I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah, I think it's really easy for stuff tied to, like, particularly like the animated shows and stuff, to not be very like deep or emotionally resonant or anything. But I think this book really it really just nailed everything it was going for. And I hope to see more books tied to the shows, and I hope to see this author get to do more in Star Wars.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I would love if there was another Project Luminous High Republic.
Yeah.
I would be all on board to have him as part of it, because I thought he brought a really, really great voice to Star Wars with this. Awesome. Well, what are we looking forward to next? We've gone through and we don't have a book right now, but we will in just a couple days with The Last Order. But between now and then, we're going to do a different episode, one that we've never done before, which is we are going to draft our own Star Wars wedding. We're going to be drafting our locations, drafting some vendors, some of the wedding party. We're going to kind of go through what characters we would want to be in our ideal Star Wars wedding. I know I'm really looking forward to this, because by the time this episode airs, I'll be married.
Yay,
so that's going to be really fun to talk about that.
I think a week before.
Woo.
It'll have been a week before. So
Yes.
last week.
Yeah.
Yay, Mike.
Yep. Yeah. And then after that, we'll have Star Wars: The Last Order, that post Rise of Skywalker book that we've been waiting for with Finn and Janna. And I'm really, really excited about that, to finally break free of that bar, basically, of being able to talk about what happens after episode 9.
Hey, now.
So I know I'm looking forward to that.
We already have a eulogy for Snap Wexley. That's enough.
That's true.
That's
enough. True. Yes. Yeah. That's true. But I'm looking forward to that. And I'm pretty sure you guys are as well.
Sure.
So we'll be doing another book review. And if you guys like this format, give us a notice, like leave a comment that we're trying to test it out. We're trying to see how we like this format, talking about these books in this way, with plot, characters, connections, and then lessons learned. And so leave us a comment if you want us to do an older book or anything like that, or you have another idea for us to do. You can reach out to us at rogue3media@gmail.com. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok, Blue Sky. You can reach us on most social media platforms under Rogue 3 Podcast. But until next time, this is going to be Rogue 3 signing off.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us to talk about the galaxy far, far away. You can find us on Instagram, Blue Sky, YouTube, and TikTok as Rogue 3 Media. We look forward to talking with you at the next rendezvous point.